Великая Отечественная война советского народа против немецко-фашистских захватчиков. Наше дело правое, враг будет разбит, победа будет за нами.
The Eastern Front, Episode 3. The First Week in the North, Part 2. The Battle for the Border. In the last episode of the Northern Front, we talked about the start of Operation Silver Fox in the Arctic, with the objective of capturing the nickel mines in Petsamo, as the town of Pechenga used to be called, and the port of Murmansk, a vital port for the Soviets to receive supplies from the Western Allies throughout Lend-Lease. In the first phase, Operation Reindeer, the German forces, assisted by the Finns, occupied the town of Petsamo and the area around it. We saw the balance of forces between Army Group North and the Soviet Northwestern Front, and we analyzed in detail the first day of the war in the north and how total surprise was achieved by the German forces, who advanced up to 80 kilometers or 50 miles and to the river Dubysa, smashing the Soviet forces that defended the border. The fighting was especially fierce in the forest around Tauragé, but the Soviet shell was cracked, and the advance was indeed astounding. Of special significance was the utter and complete destruction of the Soviet Air Force, the VVS. In the following weeks and even months, the Soviet forces had to move, live, and fight under constant Luftwaffe attack. As a matter of fact, their superiority in tanks, vehicles, both in number and quality, was partly negated by the complete dominance of the air by the Luftwaffe. A significant and generally unknown development was the use of the Taran, or ram tactic, an almost suicidal tactic of ramming Luftwaffe aircraft with their own Soviet aircraft by desperate Soviet pilots. We finished the episode with Hitler's speech to the German people, where he used the common excuses and lies to support his aggression of the Soviet Union. It is of course besides the point if it can be argued that he expected an eventual attack from Stalin. From the facts that we know today, the USSR was extremely unprepared for the German attack, due to all the reasons we talked about: military, economic, political, etc. In this episode, we will see the rest of the week in the north, from the 23rd of June to the 28th of June of 1941. And we shall start with the land. The fighting this week takes place in the country of Lithuania, in the Baltic states. It bordered with Eastern Prussia in the south, back in 1941, what today is the enclave of Kaliningrad, part of the Russian Federation. To the west, there is the Baltic Sea and the Curonian Lagoon, half of it and its sandbar, also known as the Curonian Spit, or Kuršių Nerija, as it is called in Lithuanian. It follows the river Niemen to the east all the way to the county of Alytus and its capital city of the same name. To the east was the Soviet Union, and to the north we found the Baltic country of Latvia. The country then had a very low population of just over 2 million people. It had an autocratic conservative government between the years 1926 and 1940, headed by Antanas Smetona. The small country was bullied both by Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. In March of 1939, Hitler demanded the annexation of the Klaipėda region, called Memel by the Germans, and the Lithuanians had no choice but to accept. After the signing of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, Lithuania was assigned from the German sphere of influence to the Soviet one. So the Soviets wasted no time. In October of 1939, Lithuania was forced to sign the Soviet-Lithuanian Mutual Assistance Treaty. Now, through this treaty, the USSR gave Lithuania the city of Vilnius, that the Soviets had just taken from Poland, and in exchange, the USSR established 5 bases and 20,000 Red Army soldiers inside in Lithuanian soil. After the Winter War with Finland, the USSR delivered an ultimatum on the 14th of June of 1940 to the Lithuanian government, demanding full access for the Red Army in Lithuania. The little country already had 20,000 Soviet troops inside its borders and had no choice but to accept. The president and the government fled the country as 200,000, not 20,000, but 200,000 Red Army soldiers crossed the border. That same day, the USSR delivered similar ultimatums to Latvia and Estonia. Lithuania then ceased to exist as an independent state, and a puppet communist government was set up. The geography of Lithuania is mainly flat. It is on the edge of the North European plain, with many rivers that constitute the main military obstacles. Namely, the Niemen, also called Memel or Nemunas, the Dubysa and the western Divina or Daugava in the north, etc. The land is also full with many lakes and forest and wetlands. These are the main obstacles for the advance of troops, since the land, as we have seen, it is almost completely flat. The protagonists: the Germans, the Arctic, the northern part of Norway, and all German forces in the area north of Leningrad was under the responsibility of Armee Overkommando Norwegen, led by Generaloberst Niklaus von Falkenhorst, with 3 infantry and 1 mountain troops under his command, that is, for a total of 67,000 men. The Finnish army was of course in charge of operations in her own territory and very much independent of German command. But it certainly cooperated with Germany. The Maivoimat, as the Finnish army is called, mobilized around 500,000 men, organized in 14 divisions and 3 brigades. They were under the command of Field Marshal Mannerheim. Overall command of Army Group North, led by Generalfeldmarschall Wilhelm Ritter von Leeb, was stationed north of Insterburg, today called Cherniachovsk. The 18th Army, led by Generaloberst Georg von Küchler, was stationed at Heidekrug, today called Chilute, very close to the border. The 16th Army, led by Generaloberst Ernst Busch, was in Trakehnen, today called Yasnaya Poliana, and Panzer Group 4, or 4, led by Generaloberst Erich Höppner, was in Pagegen, today called Pagegi, and on the border next to the town of Tilsit, today called Sovietsk. The Soviets. The defending Soviets were organized in 2 fronts, the North and Northwestern fronts. The Northern Front was headquartered in Leningrad and was under the command of General Polkovnik Markian Mikhailovich Popov. It had 3 armies from Murmansk in the Arctic to Leningrad in the south. The 14th Army, led by General-Lieutenant Valerian Alexandrovich Frolov in Murmansk. The 7th Separate Army in Suoyarvi in Karelia, under the command of General-Lieutenant Philip Danilovich Gorilenko, and the 23rd Army defending the area around Leningrad, led by General-Lieutenant Pyotr Stepanovich Pshenikov. The 8th, 11th, and 27th Armies were under the command of General-Lieutenants Pyotr Petrovich Sobyanikov, Vasily Ivanovich Morozov, and Nikolai Irastovich Verzarin. Now, some of these troops were still under the command of the Stavka at this stage. The plans. Generaloberst Erich Heppner, in charge of Panzer Group 4, was preoccupied with the question of what the Soviet armored and motorized units would do next. As unidentified Soviet first forces were identified on the right wing to the east and northeast. His main objective for the next days was to push northeast to the cities of Sholay and capture the crossing of the river Dvina at Daugavpils, also called Dvinsk, and Yakevpils, also known as Jakobstadt. Kuznetsov, on the Soviet side, and as we saw in the last episode, realized that he had to do something quick to stop the German advance, and so he rushed all his mechanized forces to the area between the rivers Niemen on the border and Dubysa in the area around the small town of Rasyeni. A clash of mostly tank and motorized forces was indeed in the making. of June. Fierce fighting in the battles of the border. Quoting from their website earnow.net, on the morning of June the 23rd, Sobyanikov ordered the 3rd Mechanized Corps to attack northwest and the 12th Mechanized Corps to advance southeast by noon. Their objective was to blunt the 41st Panzer Corps' thrust. To get to their assembly areas, the 3rd and 12th Mechanized marched between 60 and 50 miles or 80 to 100 kilometers respectively, while both corps had less than 1.5 hours to prepare. Therefore, Soviet counterattacks against General der Panzertruppe Georg Hans Reinhardt began slowly on the 23rd, but intensified over the next 2 days. Unquote. The German 26th Corps under General der Artillerie Albert Roderick had the 291st Infantry Division in the village of Shkodas, deep inside Soviet territory in the border between Latvia and Lithuania, attacking the surrounded Soviet 67th Rifle Division in the port city of Liepaja. And also the 61st and 217th Infantry Divisions were in the Rietavas area, east of Memel and northwest of Rasyeni. They were pushing the defeated 90th and 125th Rifle Divisions. The 125th Rifle Division reported overall combat casualties of up to 40%. The regiment commander, 2 deputy regiment commanders and 2 battalion commanders were also killed. The German 61st Rifle Division's artillery also shelled the Soviet 23rd Tank Division and scattered many of its tanks, disrupting its advance southwards. The same Soviet 23rd Tank Division tried to execute the order to counterattack, but it began with delay and did not find the enemy at all. It remained in the area around the town of Plungé. To the south, there were two German corps coming up to the front from the German rear in East Prussia. They were the 38th Corps under General der Infanterie Friedrich Wilhelm von Chapuis, and the 58th and 254th Infantry Divisions on the border just north of Pagegen, and Panzer Group 4's headquarters. And on its right stood the 11th and 21st Infantry Divisions facing the Soviets on the road from Memel, or Klaipeda as it is called today, to Raseini, southwest of the village of Pașile. They belonged to the 1st Corps, led by General der Infanterie Kuno Hans von Both. Back to the German main thrust, the 41st Motorized Corps, led by General der Panzertruppe Georg Hans Reinhardt, had the 269th Infantry Division and the 1st Panzer Division pushing northeast in the direction of the town of Šaulė in the village of Kelmė, and the 6th Panzer to its right. As the Germans advanced, 7 tanks of the 1st Panzer Division's vanguard were reported destroyed by the Soviet anti-tank guns around the village of Kelmė. On the same road to Šaulė, the Soviet 28th Tank Division had almost no fuel and lost up to 27 tanks to the Luftwaffe. Nevertheless, its 55th Tank Regiment, moving in the vanguard, engaged the German 1st Panzer Division's vanguard units, and the first tank battle took place in the Eastern Front. Major Popov, who led the attack, was killed in action, as well as 2 commanders of the tank battalions. The division reported having destroyed up to 14 German tanks and 20 guns, and suffered heavy casualties. The Soviets attacked in 2 waves with 17 and 23 tanks, a total of 40 tanks, and suffered similar losses to the ones suffered by the Germans. Major Popov was awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union posthumously. Next to them, the 202nd Soviet Motorized Division defended the approaches to Šaulė around the village of Kelmė. There, it absorbed stragglers into its ranks from the defeated and retreating 90th and 125th Rifle Divisions. On this day, Kuznetsov and his subordinate Sobienikov counterattacked, but the concentration of Soviet armor was detected by the Luftwaffe, setting 40 vehicles, including tanks and trucks, on fire. To avoid this very same air attack, Kuznetsov had ordered the tanks to advance in very small detachments, but to no positive effect. Low-flying bombers from Generaloberst Alfred Keller's Luftflotte 1 found them southwest of the town of Šaulė. There was no Soviet response on the air. And so, until the next episode, the first battle of tanks on the Eastern Front, Raseini.